Okay, here's a full first round review of the 2019 Six Nations. France Wales. Wow, probably the most interesting game of two halves I've ever seen. The French very good in the first half. They had a lot of ball. They did stuff with the ball. They made sure Wales got no points on the board. They were lucky though with the Liam Williams disallowed try, but they made sure the Welsh couldn't register. They controlled 95% of the first half. They really had the game in the palm of their hand. Second half, I don't know what the French do this a lot. They lose their way. They lose their direction. They lose their purpose, and the leadership I don't think is there. I think we have to look. You have to look, at the instructions given out by the coaches, Jacques Brunel and his coaching team, the leadership core, and the young players. The young players were really standing up and willing to take risks. They were willing to do stuff. They were willing to make the plays, but the leaders of that team were just not there. They were absent. They were absent in that second half. And yeah, they've got a lot of young players coming through, but there's a lot of pressure on these young players to perform. And with the way the French have been playing rugby for 12, 13 years, it's been a meandering, listless course. And there needs to be some kind of radical change. The Welsh, on the other hand, they cannot afford to be that passive again. They really can't afford to be that passive in defence or attack again against any of the other teams in the tournament. Yes, the second half performance was brilliant, and that's what we expect from Wales. But that first half performance, I think, was the worst I've seen the Welsh play in about a decade. And I'm being deadly honest. That was the worst Welsh half of rugby I've seen in a long time. And I understand the Welsh have got a lot of injuries to contend with and a lot of disruption to their squad, and they're having to blood new players and less fringe players now playing a major role while major players are out injured or suspended. And I get that. But that first half was absolutely appalling. I'm going to hold no punches here. That was a terrible first half by Wales. They cannot afford to do that again. The second half, brilliant. If they can play like the second half, we're going to have a very open, interesting tournament going forward. But they couldn't get the bonus point try. They gave the French a losing bonus point, which will annoy them because it could come down to bonus points. It did last year. So that's something that's going to annoy Warren Gatlin is they couldn't get that 4 try bonus point. That's made it a bit more difficult going in against Scotland and England, who've got that bonus point try. That's the real crux of it. Is it could come down to bonus points. So they will be kicking themselves. They really will. Italy, Scotland, Scotland, Italy. That was a good game. I don't think Scotland would be happy with the last 10 or so minutes and the amount of penalties they gave away after the game was wrapped up, or looked like it was wrapped up on 60 odd minutes. Then the penalties started coming, really, the discipline deserted Scotland and they really just zoned out. They thought to themselves, right, we won the game, and then Italy get 3 tries in not a very long period of time. If Scotland had switched off at 50 minutes, we might have seen the unlikeliest of unlikeliest comebacks, much like the Wales game. Scotland have to be careful with their focus. They got their plays right. They got their plays right. All the creative players stepped up a level. Finn Russell had that support from his back line. Blair Kinghorn getting his hat trick. Yes, those brilliant, intricate build-up plays are there, but you need Blair Kinghorn to finish them off, and he did so really, really well. And the 3 Italian tries were very well taken as well. They just kept the screw on, they kept the pressure up, and they played quick ball. And Scotland, if they eased off the pedal about 5-10 minutes earlier, we could have seen a different result. And I do mean that. And people going, but they beaten Italy. But they stopped playing after 60 odd minutes and their discipline went. And I think that will anger Gregor Townsend intensely. On the Italian side, Conor O'Shea will be annoyed that it took them 70 odd minutes to actually register a try. They were showing things in attack that we know the Italians are capable of. It's just stringing a full match performance together. They were still trying things in attack, and it just wasn't coming off at Murrayfield. On another day, it would. And I have some positive vibes about it today. They really put in a very good second half performance in the second half of the second half. In the last 10-15 minutes, they put the Scottish under pressure. Penalties started giving away. The Scots gave away a yellow card. The Italians took advantage of having an extra man. Normally, you score about 5 to 7 points. They scored 3 tries. Had they started doing that a little bit earlier, the game could have been significantly different because I think Scotland were tired. I think Scotland had switched off and they were taking the Italians. They'd underestimated what the Italians could do. So yes, Scotland very good for 65 minutes. You need to bring in a full 80-minute performance because they nearly threw it away in the last 15 minutes. I'm being deadly serious, and there'll be people who disagree with me on that, but I think Scotland were lucky in the last 15 minutes that they didn't concede more points. And Italy were going for that losing bonus. And imagine if Italy got the 4-try bonus point and the losing bonus point. That would have really thrown everything wide open completely in this year's Six Nations. Because that Scotland last 15 minutes was poor game management. Really poor. England Ireland. I think that was a brilliant game to watch. And as someone who's got Irish ancestry and English ancestry, I was a happy neutral in this one. I think England played very well. One area I have a cause of concern with is the discipline. At one point, the penalty count was 9-1 in favour of England, and that's not a thing you want to be winning. Is the penalty count? You want to have as few penalties as possible. They were playing on that edge again, and players overstepped that line. There was yet another yellow card. That's something that England have got to get out of their game, and it's been there throughout Eddie Jones's time in charge. Towards the end of Stuart Lancaster, there were discipline issues seeping in more and more. That is something England have to get out of their game, is the penalty count and the yellow cards, because it's going to harm them. And Ireland didn't play well at the weekend. Let's not hide behind the fact Ireland were poor. Let's be honest about that. Ireland were well below standard. But we as fans, if you're a neutral, England are going to give away penalties. And if you're an opposition, the other teams are going to be targeting England's discipline. They play on the edge, as they clearly did, and they overstep the mark more often than other teams do. And I think discipline is going to be England's Achilles heel yet again. They've solved the breakdown area to a point with some of the changes they've made in the pack through injury and retirement and by form. I think Eddie Jones has worked out the back row has been sort of fixed, with some players coming back from injury. But the discipline is just not good enough. The breakdown penalties are now moved to offside penalties and then foul play, and that's got to be a head scratcher, because yes, they won the game, but that discipline was non-existent at times. And yes, for all Ireland were poor, and Ireland were poor, that's a one-off game. If you were to play that game again 5-6 times, Ireland win 4 of them. That I have no doubt. They showed flashes in there, did Ireland, when they had possession. They really put England under the screw, and England's discipline was not good enough. Ireland will have to go back to the drawing board and look at what went wrong, which was a lot of things. And yes, they are the number 1 team in the world, and they deserve to be there. They've worked hard for the last 2-3 years to get to be the number 1 team in the world. But with the number 1 team in the world tag comes that expectation and extra pressure. And I think the Irish suited better to being the chaser of the second or third best team in the world, chasing the All Blacks, chasing the Springboks. Now that they've reached the summit and defeated the All Blacks convincingly in the autumn, I will add, it has thrown the World Cup this autumn wide open, but their defeat to England in Dublin has thrown the Six Nations wide open, more open than I think people were expecting after the first weekend. And that's going to be fun looking at the second round when we do the match previews later this week. That's going to be really interesting to delve into, the matchups that we've got coming this weekend. But you have to ask the question, why were Ireland so bad and why were England good? I don't think England were outstandingly good, but I think having Slade and Daly in the side have changed the dynamic of England in attack and defence. And the fact that England did use the high ball as a weapon, whereas Ireland were too reliant on the box kick. I think Ireland need to look at their kicking options, and I think England worked out weakness in the Irish and exploited it. Something they haven't been doing for the last couple of years. But discipline's still an issue. Absolutely, I think England's discipline is still far below where I think the majority of England fans want it to be. And I think going into the World Cup, that's an Achilles heel they need to fix. They need to solve their penalties that they're giving away. They're giving away far too many penalties. And again, another yellow card for England. So I don't know how many yellow cards there's been under Eddie Jones, but there's been a lot. And that's really hampering this England squad's development and the rebuild that clearly needs to be taking place. And they've started to hit form again, but I think the penalty count, it could be an undoing, and other teams will exploit their ill discipline. But there we go. There's a full round 1 review. And hopefully round 2 is just as exciting. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. Place your comments below, and I'll have some more videos for you soon.